Jordan, and Lebanon. Her work critically addresses digital politics, challenges techno-solutionism, and has been influential in shaping scholarship on digital activism in the Middle East. And so if you guys can come up and join us, um, we can start the presentation. So Miriam's going to start with the lecture.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, so thank you for inviting me and to also give this talk. Part of my research, long-term research project on media technology. And around 15 years ago, I think, I started doing research on Hasbara. Hasbara is the Israeli propaganda policy of basically public diplomacy, an attempt to influence public opinion. And at the time, I did research on this in the context of one of the previous wars, which was in 2014. And which was at a time when public diplomacy and propaganda was clearly an important presence on online platforms. So the Israeli propaganda policies understood, the people understood that they had to move to the internet because that's where a lot of public opinion was being shaped. And I wanted to do research on that, so I wrote a paper, Hashbara 2.0, was published in the Journal of Middle East Critique. And now with the genocide, I thought it's actually a good moment to revisit some of those ideas and some of those assumptions, because the timeline allows us to compare over time, but also the political case studies allow us to compare what the Israelis learned from the previous experiences. And I wanted to share that with you because I think it's important that we also pause and accept and realize where Israel fails and where our side, or let's say the side of justice, anti-war activism, actually is stronger. And we sometimes forget, especially in times of genocide, where everything is so gloomy and the tragedies and sufferings are so great, we sometimes forget to appreciate also the small wins. And this is why I wanted to do today's lecture. I will concepts and ideas in case you are confronted with them in your own organizing or SJP or university faculty or PhD students, because all of us have to deal with this some way or the other, and when we understand them better, we feel more empowered to deal with it. So, three things that I wanted to start off with. The context in which we are discussing this. What we have heard a lot is that this is the real, for the first time, a genocide that is experienced in real time. Or for the first time, a genocide is live streamed. And that is very important because it says something about how people consume the information from Gaza, and it says something about the assumptions previously about if only people knew then. And now we know that that's not how it works. Everybody knows it's live streamed. You don't have to break all kinds of barriers. We all know. So this is something that Israel also knows, and it knows it for some time. So during Camp Let, which was the first major military operation on Gaza in 2008, 2009, December 2008, I don't know how many of you remember that, December 2008 to January 2009, the assault on Gaza was so huge and so unlike the previous military strategies which were mostly during the Second Intifada, assassinations and killings and, some bombardments, but limited. As Jenin was flattened at the time, Nablus was very much attacked, but the scale of the military operation in Gaza in 2008-2009 was the first time seen. But it was also 2008-2009 was also a period when Facebook had already started to come up, and the media ecology has changed. And so what happened, how I describe it, is that Castlet, which was the name that they gave for this operation, Operation Castlet was the name of the military operation in Gaza, led to a shift in policy of Israeli propaganda that I describe as cast out. So Castlet led to cast out. What do I mean by cast out? I mean that Israel was no longer able to completely black out the news from Palestine. There were other ways of bringing the news out. And at that time, satellite media, particularly Al Jazeera, had already shown that it was able to mediate some of the events. So the best next thing you can do is to cast doubt on what the Palestinians claim. So casting doubt on what happened in the Second Intifada or what happened in 2008 was the best strategy. Now we all remember, those of us who were involved at the time, or who remember the first big cast out had already happened with the killing of Mohammed al-Dura. A young boy in Gaza was killed, but the Israelis claimed that this was not true, that he was killed by Palestinian bullets, ricocheted, etc. So this was the big example at the time. Now, 10, 15 years later, we see the policy of cast out morphing into an even more cynical claim, which has been named by Israelis as Hollywood. Hollywood is what they refer to as a kind of sneer towards, like, it's a combination of the word Palestine and Hollywood, which they try to suggest that some of the events are staged, acted. So some of the children that are killed or rescued, they are sort of fake. No? Oh, thank you. So this Bollywood, for me, it reminds me of a famous scene from the Marx Brothers comedy duo, where there was a certain bedroom scene, and the husband comes in, and then the person in the bed said, "How dare you accuse me? Do you believe me, or do you believe your eyes?" And this is the claim of Israel. Do you believe your eyes, what you're seeing, the live streamed genocide, or do you believe us, our interpretation? So a lot of this is happening on and through internet technologies and social media. And so what this means is also that there has always been a love-hate relation between Palestine and Palestine organizing and big tech. On the one hand, it allows for this counterclaim, like, well, we believe our eyes because we can document these things now. Or in relation to also the previous discussion about memory, the ability to archive your culture and history has changed tremendously with digital technologies. So there's a kind of like love, but there's also a major hate because the very platforms, these very means that are offering Palestine a way to document, which is very important, by the way, because even if it's on the symbolic level, if you remember the ICJ hearings, that the case that South Africa brought to the International Court of Justice, their evidence was completely based on Israeli-made footage of crimes against humanity. So they didn't even go for the like Palestine archives or journalism. They thought, you know what, we'll just take your word for it. So Israeli soldiers have been committing all kinds of crimes. Israeli politicians have been saying all kinds of things that they all archived, and that was the base of the ICJ hearing. So there are a number of things that I think you all recognize. I'm trying to like summarize 6 ways in which big tech um, are hampering Palestinian self-determination or the struggle against the genocide. First is deletion. What you see is often the deletion of the presence of Palestinian organizers from different platforms. A lot of activists and groups on Facebook, on Twitter, elsewhere. We all have stories where friends would say, "Oh my God, I woke up and suddenly my page is gone. We had an event page, we had a community, it's gone. They deleted it." Another example that we've seen also in the last few years is how the bios or account names of certain people online have been changed and added text. So one of the Palestinian organizers, for instance, in his bio, they added the word terrorist by his name. Another very important example is shadow banning, where our content on social media is still there. It's not deleted, but they changed the algorithms in a certain way that you are less visible, that your content doesn't reach people. So a lot of activists have tested this and can show that their content is not appearing on people's timeline. So that's what they call shadow banning. A fourth example is erasure of publicity of events. I don't know if you have this experience here, but just not mentioning particular events that could be, of course, what we already know from mainstream media. They just don't report on it, but also other platforms. For instance, Eventbrite has several times erased announcements for events on Palestine. Zoom has several times cancelled events on Palestine and Palestinian speakers. The fifth example is to actually attack or to change the operational means. So the tools that are being used are being altered with or taken away from you, so that you are not able to do institutional building. To build an institution or to build a community, you need a certain capacity around particular tools, and they will take away those tools from you to do so. Yeah, you can think about, for instance, Google and its use of mailing list functions or its use of petitions. Those are instruments that people have become dependent on, but if they take that away from you, they also take away your chance to build your institution. And of course, the more direct example, lastly, is arresting or accusing organizers of Palestinians based on their messages or status updates. Many stories of people who have been posting things on Facebook or texting on WhatsApp and then being confronted with that. There's videos, disturbing videos of Palestinians in Palestine or in 48 who are arrested because of what they chatted with their family members on WhatsApp, which was, a concrete reminder that there is no such thing as privacy or any of that, like fantasies. Like we're all under scrutiny, and there's not much you can do to prevent, and that's very important. So I call this the real cancel culture. Everybody's talking about cancel culture, and especially the frustrated boomers and old white men. They don't like it when people want to actually participate in the 21st century around certain ideas. So they call it, oh yeah, they cancel us. Well, it has been canceled 25 years ago, but this whole debate about cancel culture, Israel can teach you one or two lessons about this. Cancel culture in Israel, by Israel, has been something that even like back in my own PhD research in Palestine, I could see firsthand in how, for instance, during field work, some of the internet cafes I would go to were closed because the army would come and trash their computers and their internet connection and cancel their ability to communicate with the world. But also cancel culture in the sense of big institutions, big tech institutions who just don't give Palestine particular rights, such as Google, who has for years not allowed Palestine to be part of its search. You cannot imagine this now, but this was the case then. It took 10 years of lobbying to allow Palestine to be adopted by Google search, or to allow .ps, the URL, the country code of Palestine, to be accepted as, for instance, a governmental preference. So, in this time of digital media and all these abilities, what does it mean when we say that genocide is live streamed? Does it then mean that we're saying everybody knows and now the truth cannot be hidden? Actually, what it shows us is that we are living in a world full of contradictions. You can have an example where something is very live streamed, but at the same time very concealed. And I think Gaza, Palestine is that case, where you have hyper mediation, but when it comes to remediation, how is that what is being mediated on social media? Remediated through, for instance, mainstream news platforms, television programs, or newspapers, then there is a major difference. So in this process, what has happened is that Israel could not, of course, 100% conceal. That contradiction of live streamed and concealment only reaches to a particular level of status of media. For instance, many people already know and accept in a way, like, okay, I'm not going to see this on CNN, I know that. I'm not going to expect anything on BBC, whatever. Like, people already kind of calculate there's certain things you don't have to expect. So they go to like Al Jazeera or they go to social media. So there's no way to fully close off the reality of the horoscope. So Hashbara, what I said, has morphed into this policy of casting doubt, just cast doubt. The kids today call this gaslighting, when you're being gaslighted. So this Hashbara is really the art of gaslighting. And as I mentioned, there are a couple of examples like Hollywood, etc. But what it means is that also Hashbara as a state policy, because it's not just a personal or private or whatever instrument being used in Israel, it's actually state policy. There's a ministry of Hashbara. Has to use different methods to utilize its own counterattack on social media. It has pumped a lot of money, it increased its funding, it elaborated further and further its practical programs. It works with thousands of volunteers, volunteers that are go online and they're kind of like trolls. Now you can also have automated trolls, but you also need people, because trolls can be recognized as not really human, so like bots and trolls. So you also have people who go and sit and just, their task is to go and discuss wherever, Facebook, Twitter, whenever there's a discussion. They go and they have a scenario, how do you call it, bullet point, script. Yeah, and there's like a script for everything. There's a script for Hamas terrorists, there's a script for suicide bombings, there's a script for Hollywood. There's everything you can just easily reproduce, and that's the point of that is to gaslight, to constantly gaslight, to prevent a particular awareness to reach a certain point. But what I discuss in the research in the article I published is the new articles coming out in Third World Quarterly Journal is that actually what happens is that Hezbollah, rather than strengthening the Israeli agenda, is destabilizing it further because the tactics they use are also very destabilizing for its own agenda. And I try to conceptualize this by seeing it as a kind of contradiction that is caused by the fact that Israel is a settler colonial state. Conceptually, diplomacy emerged basically in the post-war period and really reached its peak in the Cold War as a way to do what you want to do without warfare, like influence opinion, propaganda. So that's what diplomacy was about, getting what you want without having to use military means. Or what Chomsky and Herman called to manufacture consent. You have to manufacture particular consent where people accept a particular reality, they internalize a certain reality. And now, how is this going to work in Palestine if it's diplomacy, if it's post-war? It's creating all these contradictions because you're trying to apply that in a period that is constantly about war. You're constantly doing war because you're a settler colony. A settler colony is inevitably going to deal with the reality that there will always be resistance. This is what human history shows. You know, from Algeria to Kenya to Vietnam, there will be resistance, and so you will be provoked into using warfare. So you're using a policy that is meant for a context without warfare, warfare by other means, not military means, in a situation where you're constantly using military means. So that's why I'm saying it's destabilizing. So I thought what it is actually, it is showing a combination of Edward Said's idea of Palestine and Israel and its discontents, and Chomsky's idea of manufacturing consent. What Israel is doing is taking it together and wants to manufacture discontent. What it wants to do is manufacturing discontent with Palestinians. So not so much content with itself, because it kind of knows that it's very hard to do that. That's why it's casting doubt, gaslight. So what it can do is manufacture discontent with the other, which is what we've seen excel in the last 2 decades, particularly after 9/11, where the Palestinian cause and subjectivity has been almost seamlessly morphed into the counterterrorism idea. So 9/11 and war against terror and Palestine have been morphed into one another. It's almost difficult not to understand how it was before without it was morphed. And so my point is that in this context, whether it was 60 years ago in Algeria by the French or today in Palestine by the Israelis, the need to surveil and to dominate through technological means was always there and is always there. There's the idea that if you own the means of production through technology, you own the means of domination, whether it's, you know, this picture from Algeria, from the Battle of Algiers. Has anyone seen that? It's epic. You should all see it. Montecorvo's epic film about the Algerian resistance movement, where you see the French in checkpoints, at checkpoints, using cameras for the first time and technology to try to develop this idea of profiling. How can you profile, you know, the terrorist, which was the Algerian? Obviously, if you have seen the movie, you know how the Algerian resistance avoided that. They were making themselves look like French, you know, dyeing their hair, wearing miniskirts, and then smuggling the weapons in their handbags. And today in Palestine, we see this develop to the most incredible sophisticated levels. the different layers of surveillance and technological warfare in Palestine, it doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. It's so concentrated, and that is related to another very important reason, namely this idea of Israel as the startup nation. Israel has the most advanced repressive tech in the world, and it produces this and exports this to other parts of the world. Our own, nation states and a lot of the reactionary dictators in the world, they use Israeli tech also to surveil and monitor their people. The Saudis, the Moroccans, the Gulf, the Americans, India has very strong relations now with Israel, using it also for its own repression in Kashmir, etc. And one of the ideas for this is that it's because it's a settled colony that it has enabled itself to develop to this extent. And why? This is because you have a dominated people on which you not only test and trial your developments, but this becomes an added value for the export market. When a buyer sees a tech, military tech that has already been employed in practice, they have more confidence in the ability of that tech than buying it from another provider who just hypothesizes around this or has a couple of trial and error. Israel can say, we have tested this and this in Gaza, so the Gaza, the last 2 years, a lot of new tech has been tested in Gaza. So Gaza is not just about actually genocide, about deterring resistance, but it has also been for more than 2 years a way to increase the value of its products, because the world can see also how it has been possible to train its technologies, its robots, its drones, and then through that training, through that testing, adjust it, sophisticate it. They immediately analyze it. Where did it go wrong? Where was it good? How do we improve it? And this is, of course, very important because it means that infrastructures are a very sensitive part of the political ecology. And this has been shown also in Gaza, where we see that Israel is very focused on what I said before, like the idea of destroying knowledge and knowledge production and archives and libraries. There's one other sector, one other aspect that you see in the targeting, which is infrastructure. So the Israeli bombardments, for instance, of mobile towers, television towers, everything you can imagine being part of the technological infrastructure that maintains society or that allows for it to communicate. And this has been something I try to understand also through the prism of the internet, through employing the term cyberside. And I try to understand it as like the deliberate policy of destruction, annihilation of the word cyberside is inspired by the word homicide, politicide, and spatiocide. Politicide, but people uses that destruction of Palestinian politics, spatiocide. Saleh Hanafi uses that to show the destruction of Palestinian physical space. And cyberside, I suggest, is a way of the cyberspace and the cyber infrastructure to destroy it. And what we've seen in Gaza way before the genocide, that there has been a non-stop effort by the Israeli military. The Paltel is the main Palestinian, telecommunication company, has been targeted many, many times. And so it's actually almost surprising sometimes when you think about this, like, how the hell did they even manage to continue to communicate? And the inventiveness of oppressed peoples is incredible, like the inventiveness of people in Gaza to still communicate and maintain a particular level of communication and education. Good. So what I try to do is to show that there are these two realities. On the one hand, you have propaganda, on the other hand, you have cyber warfare. And this creates a dependency. There is, because it's a cyber colony, there is no autonomous Palestinian internet. There is no such thing as, like Paltel, to be honest, is reselling Israeli internet. Like, there is no Palestinian internet. So there is a strong dependency. And as I said, this has a double impact. That means that Palestinians must resist both the colonialism in cyberspace and colonialism in the physical space. So cyber colonialism and physical colonialism. So how do we link these contradictions? It means that Israel has to deal with a reality whereby particular events cannot be hidden. So the imperial warfare of Israel is out there, but also, why is it still out there after 2 years? You would think that if this was a policy to suppress, with the might, the military might, why would you still have a genocide after 6 months? Normally, that would be it. So what the world has shown now is that, so despite the cyber side, despite the cyber colonialism, the Palestinian negation of Israeli control continues. It doesn't seem to work to terrorize it to submission. Um, and this is quite incredible, honestly. This is history in the making, right? That this will be seen as a huge defeat for Israel, at least on a mental level. You did not manage to submit the most, oppressed people one can imagine after 2 years of the most violent, incredible activities. The second fact that this has produced is actually, in fact, that despite all the gaslighting and Hezbollah, the transnational world, the world has actually grown, its sympathy has grown for Palestine. It has not limited, it has actually grown. And what is interesting here is that despite all the stereotypes about young kids and teenagers and the kids today and the Gen Z as a kind of like, oh, they are only interested in themselves, they are only interested in social media, influencers, consumerism, they don't care, they're selfish. Actually, what we see is that this transnational shift is carried to a large extent by the most young audiences. They're the most militant pro-Palestinian people. I will show. So why is this the case? So many people have heard the stories about the accusations of TikTok, saying that TikTok is brainwashing our children and it is organizing the algorithms of TikTok to recruit the children, but actually research after research shows that that's not the case. There are no algorithmic shifts or tricks. It's the case more that the kids are interested in what is happening in the world, and because they are so attuned to social media, they are the digital natives, they see things that seep through social media. They have, for instance, contacts on Instagram and TikTok that they follow who report from Palestine. There are children in Palestine who became big influencers. Children in Palestine that are reporting about their daily life. You have teens in Palestine that are doing like cooking programs, and it's very, of course, it's really empowering and funny sometimes, joyful. But obviously the context is like, how do I make a dish with nothing? That is basically the cooking program. Like, how do I make pancakes with a biscuit roll? And they have become an entity in themselves, and they have become part of this kind of global protest, sort of, a group of people with a critical idea. And it has come to the attention, of course, of the schools and Zionist organization. And of course, they're very scared. You wouldn't expect it, but people are really scared of children. It's like you can't, you want to control children, but once they go against a particular normative understanding, you feel like, okay, if they already slip now through our hands, then what is going to happen? So some of the children have been reported to police. There are stories from Britain where children have had the police at their door because there were complaints about them based on badges and stickers they had on their bags, or what they say in the classroom. That they have discussion in the classroom and they say, free Palestine. So I've done some data analysis, I've done some empirical research, looking at social media content and communication using a number of hashtags, and looking at 4 different timelines: November 23, February 24, September 24, and April 25. So looking at 6 months apart. And I was actually struck by just how big the difference was between some of the pro-Palestine hashtags and some of the pro-Israeli hashtags. For instance, if I compared Stand with Palestine with Stand with Israel, the difference is almost triple. But then I looked a little bit closer into the different timelines and interactions, and I could see that there were these fluctuations. Things would go up and then down and then up, and how is that? Why, you wonder? But still, in terms of the main hashtags that people use, because people are also very selective, they know you have to be efficient. You can't make too many different hashtags. You need to concentrate your impact by agreeing almost. There's an almost sort of global unspoken agreement that we will use hashtag Stand with Palestine. Don't muddle it with bringing another hashtag from another. And you can see also how the English language is very dominant. So the hashtag Stand with Palestine will be used also in other language groups. So if I compare, for instance, X and TikTok, you see TikTok is far more dominant, right, than X. X you see in the beginning, but then like becoming almost equal. TikTok is the green, obviously, is Palestine, Stand with Palestine. And then as the genocide moved on, you can see in the timeline, November, February, September, actually Israel completely disappeared. Like it's so overpowered on TikTok. TikTok is so clearly not the place where they can do any gaslighting. In fact, my examples show that the more gaslighting they do, the more they irritate the kids, because there was one thing kids can't stand, and that is that they feel like they're being duped by these adults are trying to dupe them with lies. Teenagers are rebellious, so they see through that. So what we see on TikTok is really this phenomenon of using the means and the culture of TikTok, of young Gen Z groups in politicizing or bringing politics in the vocabulary in a kind of very organic way. It's like if you compare it to the Hasbara TikTok content or content, it looks a bit, Hasbara looks a bit artificial, looks a bit like acted, like really they try very hard. But if you look at the Palestinian, pro-Palestinian content, it has a very organic, natural expression. And what I like are the examples of Gen Z and on social media, namely that the way they mediate their frustrations about what's happening in the world is done in a language and in a format that already exists for them on social media. So they're not like going to design or discover a new format for Palestine. They integrate it. And so one of the examples is the videos on TikTok selfies or videos that these individuals make that are very popular among. I have some nieces that age, but makeup videos are so popular. How to do makeup, what kind of foundation to use, etc. So what they do is they use these makeup videos to talk about Palestine, to bring up the discussion of Palestine. So they say, you know, like today we're going to experiment with eyeshadow, and then they do the Palestinian flag. Or like another video, you don't see any Palestine, but every step of the motion of doing the makeup or the nails, they will talk about something to do with Palestine. So it sounds, if you actually turn the sound off, you don't know whether there's anything to do with Palestine. And what I find so interesting about this is that it expresses a self-awareness of users that they are under surveillance and that they're being monitored. So they know that they have to maneuver around these contradictions. They do it in a smart way to pretend that they are not engaged with Palestine because they know that they might be watched by their family or school or whatever. And what I really like about this social media culture in the context of Palestine, of these Gen Z, is that they in turn influence other users. So their format has been adopted in other groups. And so that means that they have cultural impact, they change culture. So what you see is that these video styles of music, doing playback, what do you call it? Not playback, like to when you do like uh, do you sing a song and mimic? What's the word? Like like karaoke, like we call, huh? No, like karaoke. We call it playback, but I don't know. You just lip syncing. Yeah. So the lip syncing is another popular output on social media. Lip syncing on Palestinian music or whatever, some famous songs, Ana Palestinian, and like other really popular songs, and they lip sync. So their cultural artifacts, like makeup videos, manicure, nails, lip syncing, have been taken up by other, like adult users. So the kids are influencing also how adults are using social media. So these makeup videos have also been taken up by pro-Palestinian activists from queer backgrounds, from in other parts of the world, etc. And then also it led to discussion about makeup itself. So then BDS picked up this point about, okay, which makeup is actually BDS halal? You know, like some makeup brands that people were using are actually on the boycott list. So this is a kind of contradiction. Like you're doing this video, but actually you're using this brand. No. So it's sophisticated also further, and then you have this BDS safe makeup list. And then you have other commercial corporate takeoffs, where, for instance, as you can see there on the right, companies are providing pro-Palestinian brands because they also know they want to attach to these young digital media users in a way that also has a corporate so I find that really interesting how beyond Palestinian, pro-Palestinianism, what also in that process happens is they change the culture of digital participation and engagement. Now, obviously, these kids, these young people, and I'm generalizing, of course, because there's exceptions, they're often young people, but adults, older people like it and are inspired and also do the same thing. Yeah? And we're open-minded. Older people are also welcome to throw Palestine stuff on TikTok. But what happens is that they become viral trends by way of mocking the Israeli Hashbara and Israeli social media. There have been many examples of Israeli Hashbara that then became satire. If you remember, there was a video of Israeli soldiers saying that they discovered, like on a list in a house that they had overtaken, they discovered like indication of a terrorist attack or something, or weapons, something like that. And but that just turned out to be the alphabet. It was just the Arabic alphabet for some of the kids in the house. And there was another example of a curtain where the Israelis showed that this is the evidence of the tunnels, and there's no such thing. So what these influencers on social media also began doing, it was taking humor as a format to express particular pro-Palestinian critique. So you have these influencers who mimic, who act as if they are the Israeli soldiers and go about showing the evidence of Hamas. So this girl is showing this Hamas because you can see it in the Tatris. There is a secret message in the draft that is showing that there is. So they use satire also to engage online. So and these examples are interesting in that they go, it's not about per se Arabs or Palestinians, it's kids from all over, and a lot of them Jewish kids. So this Jewish kid also became really popular, the one in the middle. He became a popular influencer on TikTok because he was criticizing Israel. And so TikTok became a target and became accused of breeding, terrorists and influencing people. And so what Hashbara started to do was they started to think, well, we need to, like keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. So rather than going against them, because these influences have a certain power that we don't have, they can ridicule you, mock you, expose you, cancel you. So rather than attack them, they thought, let's buy them. So they started to individually contact different influencers and pay them lots of money to be on their side. Now, a lot of them, of course, do it for the money, but many of these influencers that have been contacted by Hashbara have actually used that as a way to expose it even further. So they would use actually these stories, and they would, do a video about it. So like, yeah, I got this email, and they show the emails. They talk you through the emails, the contacts, how much money they're offered, and of course they say, you cannot buy my support for genocide. So that kind of like turned against itself. This is what I mean by the Hashbara creates its own antagonism. So I wanted to end with this as a kind of like reminder that amidst the horrors and the sense of loss and the sense of being on the weak side when we see people like Trump or Starmer, whatever, when it comes to public opinion, which is actually very crucial for Israel because it knows that its support, the support it gets from the states, from different states, is at some point still going to depend on that state's own support from its constituencies. There is a link. It's not automatic. And so if we look at the graphics, it's quite incredible just how overpowering pro-Palestinian sentiments and opinions are. Despite the millions and millions of dollars that are pumped into Hashbara compared to the very almost nothing pumped into pro-Palestine organizing, despite the very well connections with big tech and big tech being complicit in, remember the list at the beginning, the erasure, despite all of that, pro-Palestinian content is not just winning, it's actually dominant, it's overpowering. So I thought sometimes a picture says more than 1,000 words, And so if you see these that I use like Brand 24 to analyze it, if you see this kind of chart, you kind of realize like how unequal it is. Thinking of how many times Palestine are mentioned. So let's forget about impact in terms of how much is being shared, because you can manipulate that. Algorithms can manipulate that. But if you look at mentions, this is approximately the division. Stand with Palestine compared to stand with Israel. And why did I want to end with that is also we need to remember our strengths and the positive side, but also that it doesn't happen out of the blue. There are a lot of people who are organizing as well, resistance. And last month, a huge example came out after 2 years of organizing, actually longer, before the genocide, but the genocide allowed that impetus by Microsoft workers. Microsoft organized themselves, some of the workers, against the genocide. They had to retreat from one of the collaborations with the Israeli army. And that's because dissidents within big tech have been growing tremendously in the last 2 years. There's a new generation of tech workers, a new generation of people in Silicon Valley and other Silicon Valley type parts that are talking about setting up their own unions, that are talking about what does it mean to be complicit with genocide, and they're organizing. And they've been organizing all kinds of campaigns and events, so back for apartheid, Google workers, and it's really, really incredible. So I think maybe you already work with them here, but if not, this would be something to think about as PACC, also to think about inviting them to come here to give a talk, to show you also how to use alternative tech. And so I think this is the end of my contribution. Just wanted to remind you that there is really an overwhelming rejection of the genocide. That also today this happens despite the subjugation. Let's not forget the price people pay. A lot of people pay a lot of prices for this. It's not something that happens organically. And that by showing the analysis of social media that Hashbara interventions maybe only imply that they're successful, but they're not successful. Sometimes people say, oh my God, look at Hashbara, they're so powerful. They have $200 million in, it implies their power, but don't forget that it's not the same as power. To own boards doesn't mean that you own their output. And so Israeli Hasbara is an example in a time that often leaves us hopeless, that also gives us a sense of triumph, and we should not forget that. And finally, Israeli Hasbara also highlights Western complicity. We need to organize in the places that we are. It's important to do charity, of course. It's important to organize for food and clothes and what have you. Now it's raining in Gaza. The tents are, I don't know if you've seen it, but the rain in Gaza is very, very heavy, so the tents are useless. People are in water. It's good to do that, but it's also very important, if not maybe even more important, to organize in your own political context. Your employer, your neighborhood, your Congress representatives, they need to be also a target because if it isn't for this complicity, the genocide would not have been possible. So I leave it at this, and thank you so much. If you want to read or do a paper or study about this, I have some texts here, and I'm really happy for you to, through Majida or PACC, to get in touch with me if you want to do your own dissertation or project or anything.
We just want to give Miriam another round of applause for an active presentation that really takes us through thinking about a very material way of decolonizing the mind, right? Going back to the introductory presentation that was really excellent in helping us frame what it is that what it is that we're doing and the work that we're doing to ensure that we're not being sold and participating or being complicit in really buying these bill of goods. So we want to take some time to answer any questions that people have in the audience, because I'm sure a lot has bubbled up for you, right? From the very basic point to how many of you, participate and engage in social media by commenting, responding, sometimes engaging against some of that, trying to be triggered by some of that same gaslighting that Miriam was talking about. Or perhaps you're one of the people who's been canceled, who's been profiled. Manat and I, unfortunately, are some of those folks. We've been targeted and profiled on social media and, challenged for our work and the work that we're doing, and having it be framed as work of extremists. So be it. So clearly, we know that means that we're doing something well. We're communicating something that our communities need to hear. So we want to start with some questions here in the blue, and then Gail, and then you.
I just want to thank you for such a powerful presentation. Your research is so rigorous, so thank you for that. I feel that we have to acknowledge also all the journalists they assassinated.
Yes.
Despite losing the propaganda war, they had to kill how many journalists?
Yes.
268?
Yes.
And that's the only thing I wanted to really acknowledge in your presentation. They took away the voice of credentialed journalists on the ground who were trying to tell the truth. And despite all those assassinations, they're still not winning the information war. Is it 260 that they killed?
Yeah, I think it's 300 something. Thank you so much. That's so important. That's so important. This is unprecedented. And actually, I'm frankly really disappointed in many of the international, some of the highbrow journalism unions and institutions. This is their sector. These are their colleagues. I think the medical sector is organized much better. There's been a lot of solidarity among doctors, international, in Britain, in Holland. Many people also try to go to Gaza actually to do voluntary work. But I'm really disappointed. But then again, let's not get drowned into the disappointment, because they are who they are, and they are complacent, and they will, But you're right, it's incredible. Look how many they have to kill to get to conceal. So you're so right. Gaslighting happens in parallel with murder and assassination. One doesn't exist without the other. The immaterial and the material are both the same. Thank you for bringing that up. And we need to remember, and us and all the other journalists.
No, I think that's an example of the organizing locally, right? For those of us who are here, who can and have influence in media companies here in the United States. Yeah.
I love your presentation. It was just so powerful. I have two questions. Is the translation Hasbara, is that mean gaslighting? No. Propaganda. Propaganda. Okay. And having two Gen Zers, I was really intrigued by your research about the hashtags, and I'm curious what your research shows about the contributing factors more recently to the Stand with Palestine social media presence. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
We're gonna collect questions, so we're gonna keep going. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious to know if you plan on continuing the research now that Larry Ellison's family has bought TikTok, and his son owns TikTok. I think China still owns the algorithm.
When was that? I didn't know.
Yeah. Like a month ago.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, just curious to know if you plan on doing continuous research to compare the point where the Ellison family buys TikTok and potentially changes the algorithm, and the 2 years back.
And then I think up front here you had a question.
Yeah, I was, I think tagging on the journalist question, and I think, and your comments about the disappointment And I think it highlights something very important, which I think you also kind of showed it in your research, which is the voice. They're trying to erase the voice. They gave more attention to the medical, but they didn't give it attention to the removing of the voice. And I think through your presentation we saw that honestly the voices of Palestinians are diminishing. The conversation about genocide is still there, but slowly the voices of other people are taking over. And I'm wondering if you looked at that, or if it's something you can look at deeply, or any thoughts you have. And Mariam, it's so good to see you.
We bumped it, we
knew
happened
each
to
other
know
from
each other
Oxford.
from 10 years ago in Oxford.
And I think there was one more hand in the back, yes.
I just wanted to give a brief comment about I'm really glad you're researching this because I actually wrote and published a column on the topic of social media and
Good.
on Palestinian activism online. So with keeping what you said and my background in mind, I just wanted to ask, what is your thoughts about the algorithm and how people interact with those narratives, right?
With?
Interact with those narratives, right? Because on the one hand, someone could say, well, this is their beliefs, this is the kind of propaganda each side has been shown. And then on the other hand, someone could say, well, the Palestinian African, we see that this is the truth, this is what they believe in, and it's not something that, it's not propaganda that they consume compared to the Israeli side. And how that reflects on us as individuals, because it really is very concerning when you see the images coming out of Gaza and they're just so devastating. We're seeing it in real time. Yet at the same time, we still see people online and in real life propagate some algorithm. And yeah, I just wanted to comment on that because during my research, that was something that I was thinking about. Because this is a deeper reflection on ourselves. We can't really, it's just the world mirrors how it really
Yes.
fight in our own.
All right. Okay, I'll just speak whatever I remember, and then you remind me if I forgot. On the point of what is interesting about internet users, I've been doing this research since my PhD when it was Web 1. Before it was Web 2, now it's Web 3. And what you see is also sometimes there's a lot of focus on the platform or the technology itself. And then your hypothesis is built around what you think that platform or technology will do. Where actually, from a critical analysis, the phenomenon that I'm looking at is in a dialectical relation with the society or the social norms and needs. So what often happens, in other words, is these platforms or technologies there is no loyalty to them. They are used when they are useful. And so that's why we've seen an incredible contradiction of platforms that weren't meant for something become something. So a platform that was meant for pure entertainment or even like narcissistic self-exploration become a political, very contested space. Who thought that that TikTok would be a site of contestation? Like in the beginning, people didn't know how to deal with it because that's not. You think you have to do like research about Al Jazeera or some activist platform, but actually, it shows you the organic way with. If you look at it in a holistic, dialectical way, with how users deal with technology. So, in other words, if TikTok loses its use, people move on to another platform. This is what we've seen in the last 10 years. if the Gen Z, Facebook was an important platform during the uprisings, but the younger kids, they really associated it as a platform with their parents. And when you're a kid, you really don't want to be associated with what your parents use. So Facebook lost that important role it had. It ceases to be the organizing space, and people went to other spaces. So you're right, things will change once the tools that we and the spaces we use are changing in terms of their algorithms or their ownership, because they're all a part of a political economic model that relies on ownership. They are business models. Um, and I think not too worried about will there not be any other spaces? There will be another space. What I'm worried about is more about when you look at the erasure, the slide we discussed about the erasure. What I'm more worried about is the dependency on corporate platforms that you invest a lot of time in archiving, for instance, your history or your library. What happens if they cut the line? And this has happened with Facebook as well and with YouTube. Hundreds of videos that people have put on YouTube were then taken down by YouTube. And then people realize, oh, we didn't have a plan B. So I'm more worried about the dependency on some of the platforms, not so much TikTok because it's not archiving this, but other platforms that activists should not be using. This is why I think it's really great. Like we did a workshop back in November at the beginning of the genocide at with the Institute for Technology in the Public Interest. Look it up, TTPI. We organized a workshop for activists organizing on Palestine on how to use technology and what, because activists often, we are in such an urgent moment that we don't have time to invest in alternatives. It feels like a luxury, you know. So activists would tell us, "Yeah, you are saying I want to use something else in Google." Well, let them La La Land. You are what? Nothing. It's only Google. Yeah, what do you want? Okay, we need to make a division of labor. Some people will use these platforms in this moment because it's urgent. Other people have to be freed, their time has to be freed. We need to tell them you can't engage in this or that because we need to free your time to start developing alternatives. We need to have a division of labor in our movements. We can't just go away with the wave, whatever, and then be shocked. Oh God, why didn't you invest in an alternative? So this is what the workshop we did was, there are alternatives for almost everything. There is an alternative for Zoom. There is an alternative for Google Forms. People find it very difficult to organize without forms. There is an alternative for petitions. There is an alternative for archiving notes. You don't have to use the cloud, their cloud. So there is an alternative for everything. It's just that you need to unlearn what you learned, and you need to accept that the alternative will not have the exact same provisions as you're used to. And you know, you can do that. So I think I'm confident that there will always be another alternative. Thankfully, people are what do you call it? We are open, huh? Open, and also we are not committed to. I feel so bad about dropping TikTok. No, nobody feels bad. Like we will move on to the next step. This brings me also to the question of when you said about Gen Z and about also your kids. It's funny because a lot of parents are learning from their children on how to use these platform. And I think it's really, what for me is very interesting is this demographic question. I think what is very panicking for Israel and its supporters is that you're dealing with a demographic that is coming of age. And there's something about, I'm not an educator or pedagogist or whatever, it's not my field of expertise, but there's something about a particular, when something happens in a particular lifetime, that it never, like they say, like toddlers, or between 1 to 3, there are particular developments that are life-changing, and for teenagers, for young adults, it's the coming of age in a time of genocide. They're coming of age in a time of really the most incredible form of hypocrisy. They have been told that as long as you work hard, as long as you're honest, you pay your taxes, that there will be justice, you will have your right. And they're seeing a reality whereby speaking out against the murder, mass murder of children, then you can be suspended, or you can be, your account can be taken down. They don't understand. They're making this connection. And so they're coming of age in a time that they're going to be far more politically sharp than we are. They're going to have an instinct about the do's and don'ts. And a lot of the previous generation still have this, I don't want to use the word naive, but a kind of instinct, it lacks a bit of that instinct, that kind of believing in, well, I have nothing to hide, so they can surveil if they want. And then people now understand, like, they're coming of age, so they will be the educators. They will be the whatever profession you can think of. So they are going to be adults in particular parts of society whereby it's going to be very important to have an ally. And if they're going to be an ally in a new round of like organizing around something, that could tip the scale. And that's, I think, why there is this anxiety around this. And that's why I also wanted to make the point, I don't know who raised it, about the individual versus the collective versus the state, those three levels that we need to use to deconstruct. I think that's why I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I mean, like, the institutions are part of hegemony. You know, I'm using this kind of understanding of like Antonio Gramsci, where hegemony is seen as power of consent that is organized through education, civil society, etc. They are trying to also use the language of personal safety to depoliticize our kids. So they will say we should allow these children to consume all this stuff from Gaza on the internet because it's very traumatizing. It's so disturbing. What kind of parenting is this? It's terrible. This is the wrong way of dealing with children. You should save them from this adult stuff and just let them play. And so these individual ideas about safety and welfare and mental health are also ways to depoliticize our children. So we should be aware at school meetings or in the media when they bring this up, always be suspicious. What is their
What is their real agenda?
Yes. Why suddenly they care? They don't seem to care about these other children that are under the rubble, but they care about our children watching children in the rubble. Sorry, I forgot your question. I think time is up.
No, I think you answered really.
Oh, okay.
No, my question about did you do any research about how the Palestinian voices?
Oh yeah. No, just one thing. I quoted, I mentioned it was Said about this content. Another very important essay of Said is permission to narrate. The permission of a people to narrate their own story, which is indeed, as you say, like physically and materially excluded. But also, I think, for a lot of Palestinians, what has become also a dilemma is that there is not competition, but there is the survival and everyday needs to manage, and then the responsibility of reproducing knowledge, and it's very difficult to do both. So I'm actually not against the division of labor, also in a global political sense, where we say, one of the tips I would have also about this question of like using social media to deal with Hajbara, I would say also have a division of labor where you say, as Palestinian organizers who are already under a lot of scrutiny and they're dealing with a genocide that is about theirs, they're digesting a genocide, don't engage with Hajbara. Let others do that. It's okay to have a division of labor. There should be no guilt, no sense of like, oh, but I feel like I should challenge the Zionist, whatever narrative. No. There are thousands of others who are happily doing this for you. You focus on other things that are necessary in terms of survival and reproduction. Reproduction of this community setting, reproduction of whatever. Others are dealing with the propaganda online. I would advise that to be very efficient about yeah, and we have to end because we also have to be efficient in that sense.
Thank you so much. I just want to really extend a huge thank you to Miriam, who she was coming to the United States to attend the Middle Eastern Studies Association conference in Washington, D.C. next week. And I said, well, you have to absolutely come to the PACC. You have to come to New Jersey. And we have the benefit of her time and her incredible knowledge and research and have that be shared with us here and that investment in our community. So thank you to PACC for hosting us and for really making this possible today. And thank you again, Lydia.
I just want everyone attending the conference to know that in your gift bag, there is a meal voucher for Jerusalem Falafel. Also, thank you to Drink Palestina for sponsoring the drinks today in the back. And so make sure you enjoy the Palestinian market. This is a form of what Maria was talking about, building our own spaces, right? Like we don't have to use Google, we don't have to drink Coca-Cola. We can create our own spaces and eat our own food. And so please enjoy your lunch. We're gonna have a little break and then we're going to have Echoes of Home, Palestinian Families in Waiting, will be screened in PACC Hall. I highly encourage watching this documentary. It's just really important to hear from Palestinians in Gaza, about their experiences, and connect with the community, visit the Palestine education and civic engagement tables, and mingle. Get to know people who showed up today because we're obviously like-minded in some sort of capacity. So please enjoy the Palestinian market, and thank you. Okay. All right, so that's your break. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zion, and thank you again, Miriam, for coming and joining us today. We really appreciate it. So, as Mona said, we really encourage you to visit the Palestinian market. We have Jerusalem Falafel with us. We have Sukun Coffee. We have vendors for sales. We also have some educational vendors. So, Palestine civic engagement. We're doing letter writing, so we got good nice attention. PCRS is doing letters to children in Gaza. We have a Gaza exhibit, we have Palo Alto with us, we have QA New Jersey, so a lot of great people today. I know AB Woodburn is doing like custom wooden keychains, so there's a lot of cool stuff. We highly encourage you to support. We did go into lunch a bit, so we are going to play, there's no pressure. I know this has been a long day, so if you'd like to go in and take a break and walk around and shop, we will play the video at 5, but a little after, before we start. But the next session is at 5:30, the documentary screening of It Is All About Palestine. Thank you.
Yeah, I heard that in your video.